Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. My name is Adam Okada. Our host, Kevin Anderson, can't be here with us today. He is taking a well deserved vacation. But we are here with Abby Smart, one of our newest Healthmark employees, clinical research associate. Did I get that title correct? Thank you.
That is
And
correct.
yeah, we're so excited that she joined the team. And we're going to recap the webinar that Abby just did. So, Abby, I first want to welcome you to the team and did a great job on the webinar today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was really fun, and research is a topic I'm super passionate about. So it's fun to share and hopefully help more sterile processing professionals get involved in research.
Yeah, and if you weren't able to watch the webinar, I highly recommend it. It's one that I myself am going to go back to and watch because Abby really broke down everything you need to know about how to start and compile a research study. So for those that weren't able to join the webinar and maybe don't have the time to watch that 1 hour webinar, how does one get started with creating a research study?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a big question, and I'm sure that as people are trying to get started in research, that's what they're going to be thinking about. I think in my webinar, I talked through the steps of the scientific method. The first one is to notice. Notice what's going on around you and start to wonder, start to ask questions about it. That's going to give you lots of ideas for studies that can be done. Most, if not all, of the sterile processing people that I know are very curious and very passionate, and that's great because that's kind of the piece that can't be taught, right? You have to lead with curiosity. And I think from there, you really don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look at what's been done by other people. Probably you're not going to pick a topic that no one has ever looked into ever, right? So start by looking at what other people have done. Think about, how you can build on that and maybe ask additional questions that could get us to more of a solid evidence base on that topic. So it doesn't have to be super complicated. You can start really small, you can start really simple. Um, there's such a thing as a pilot study, so you can do really tiny test 10 scopes, and call it a pilot study and say we're just getting foundational start to where we're going. So start small, you can always go bigger later.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And what I would say is what Abby said is perfect. It's your own natural curiosity, right? If you have an idea about something that you think, hey, I wonder what the results would be of this, or I wonder if this item would get clean, following the IFUs. All those studies started with I wonder, right? There was some kind of question that somebody asked, and then the researcher said, I want to look into this more and I want to find out. And the other thing is it might change over time, right? Like there's when we did our pouch study that Rebecca Peplow and I have been working on, we presented our poster at HSPA this past year. When we started that, it was really about robotic
Hmm.
instruments and then the cost of pouching and what the cost of sterilizing those instruments would be. And it sort of morphed into something different. Like we had a specific question in mind, but the study became different over time. And again, you can find those results hopefully soon. We'll be able to publish those and look at that larger study. But when somebody's thinking about their study, I mean, one thing that you mentioned in the presentation, and when I talked to you before, and you sort of taught us about research basics, you talked about confounders. I had
Hmm.
never heard that terminology before. But what are confounders? What are some other research basics that people should know about when they're heading into their research study?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. Confounders are really tricky. They are things that can make it look like there's a relationship between two factors that maybe don't actually have a relationship, right? So the example I used in the webinar was from my laparoscopic instrument defect study that was recently published in BINT. And basically, we had a confounder that made it look like there was a relationship between the surgical service line that was using the instruments, and the high proportion of instruments that had defects, right? So it looked like something was going on with this service line that was causing their instruments to be more damaged. However, we had a confounder, which was the insulated handles. So we found that instruments with insulated handles were way more likely than, or sorry, the insulated handles on instruments were way more likely to have defects on them than the instrument shafts. And for whatever reason, this service line had a much higher proportion of instruments with insulated handles. So when we kind of accounted for that relationship being there, it turned out that that service line wasn't actually causing more damage. They just had more insulated handles that were more likely to be damaged. Confounders are a really tricky one. Like I said, they can trip up the best of us. I think another really key thing to think about is the different types of study design. Um, Observational studies are going to be really straightforward. You're just looking at what already is going on in your department, not necessarily introducing any changes or comparing two groups in any way. Where an interventional study, you might be comparing, before and after you make some kind of quality improvement, or you might be comparing two groups that are undergoing different conditions. These are kind of basic things that you want to think through before you start doing your study. Definitely, as sort of a basic research concept that I want to hammer home is have a protocol. Really think through everything before you get started. The last thing you want to do is get, months down the line with data collection, realize that you have totally missed something or totally were quantifying something the wrong way. So if I could nail home one thing, it's be prepared, write it all out, and make sure you are truly set to go before you get started.
Have a protocol is a great piece of like starting advice, right? You have to know what you're looking for and try to stay consistent throughout it. And again, there's going to be things that come up, but confounders might lead you in a direction that was a false direction, and you got to circle back and then realize what happened. And research studies are so interesting in that way. And I think you covered that really well in the webinar that, you
Mhm.
know, there's so many different ways to conduct a research study, observational and all these different things. And then your data that you get is also going to lead you in different directions based on what you thought you would get versus what you are getting and things like that. So fascinated by the whole topic. But one thing that you covered in the webinar that I really liked and I thought was very helpful for people was what does a good research study look like? Because there's a lot of research out there. If you Google, what you're looking for, and I want to know if there's a study on this, you're going to have a lot of things come back at you. But what does a good research study look like, and how can we tell the difference?
Yeah, that's absolutely a great question, and you are correct that there's a lot of information out there that maybe is not as reliable as we would like it to be. There are a few things that stand out to me as things to look out for. The first would be a clearly defined research question, right? The researchers should have thought ahead of time about what question they're trying to answer, be really clear about what that is, and that way we can kind of assess, okay, did they actually answer that question? You'll hear researchers sometimes refer to this as validity, which just means is the study measuring what it actually is trying to measure, right? So there are a lot of different forms validity can take. I won't dive into all the details right now, but essentially, right, does this check out? Do the methods seem to make sense to answer the questions that were posed? Another one would be reliability. Does it seem like these results could be reproduced? Right? A good study is going to be about consistency. If I do a study and I write out my methods and someone else on the other side of the world does the same study, our results should be more or less the same, accounting for differences in our settings and all of that. But generally, if we have good methods, someone else should be able to reproduce what we did. And finally, we want to look for minimizing sources of bias. So that's going to be, not what I think colloquially we think of as bias, like, oh, you're biased, you can't talk about this subject. This is a very specific term that we use in research to talk about sort of a systematic error that might push our results in one direction or another. So for example, if you're doing a study where you want to see if your lumen surgical instruments are clean, but you only sample instruments that you kind of already think are clean, you might be biasing your study towards thinking that there's not really a problem with our lumen surgical instruments, right? So you have to be really careful about that. I think it actually can be really easy to accidentally design a study that confirms what you already thought to be true rather than reflecting reality. So definitely something to watch out for. There's a lot of complexity there, but it's a good thing to be thinking about. And the last thing I would look for is just transparency. As I spoke to in my webinar, every study is going to have strengths and limitations. And a good researcher is going to be really upfront about this is what we did, this is what was good about it, this is what we, would do differently next time, or this is what this particular study design didn't really allow us to assess. That's not invalidating the study at all. That's just being honest about the strength of the evidence that we have and how much we can interpret that, how far we can take our recommendations based on that data. So look for that kind of transparency. It's not a negative, it's actually a huge green flag when you see a researcher talking about the limitations of their study.
Yeah, and it's usually that you would think like when we read internet articles, a lot of it's just I'm right about this thing and I have this really strong opinion about this, and there's no kind of qualification. So when you read a research study and they're telling you, hey, here's where the limitations are, we didn't measure this thing that we really should have, and disclosing that, you're right. It does lend a lot of validity to it because it's being honest about what they were doing and the results that they were getting. Um, so yeah,
Really.
I highly recommend this webinar. If you were not able to check it out, please go check it out. But Abby, do you have any final thoughts for aspiring researchers out there?
Yeah, I would say just try it. If you're excited about doing a study, watch my webinar, look up some sources about how to design a study. There certainly are plenty out there, but at the end of the day, try it. Ask some interesting questions, start exploring to try and figure out how you can answer those questions. Definitely, I'd be happy to hear from you. Reach out to me if you have any questions about study design. I would love to hear anybody's ideas. Yeah, ultimately, I am excited about the idea of more scale processing professionals getting involved in research because I think that that is something that this field really desperately needs more and more and more of. So that is what I would recommend.
Yep, just do it. Get started.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Abby, so much for being on the podcast today. Thank you for doing the webinar. Again, go check it out at Healthmark Academy. It is the June 2026 webinar with Abby Smart. Kevin, I hope you're enjoying your vacation. Abby, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.